My guest on this episode of the Neil Wilkins podcast is Sebastian Chedal. Now, Sebastian is the founder and CEO of Fountain City. He has over 25 years of experience in digital marketing, in systems design, and of course, the topic we're here to talk about today, AI. He helps businesses scale through human-centered automation and intentional strategy. Right up my street. Sebastian brings a mindful approach to AI, focusing on how technology can enhance creativity, maybe improve operations, and certainly support long-term business goals. Welcome to the podcast, Sebastian.
Thank you, Neil. Pleasure being here.
I mean, you're talking there, or I'm talking there about you, about all of the kind of, I guess, most pertinent things that people are considering and finding challenging or kind of trying to plan for in AI marketing and business right now. I mean, you really are at the sweet spot there, aren't you?
Yes, I will say right now, I think that the overall feeling is that we're in the dip of the hype cycle. So we're in that trough phase. So sometimes it still feels like I'm early at the party, like I'm shown up and just waiting for people to come. That's still kind of the feeling. But yes, we made a decision, Fountain City, towards the end of last year to really go full in on AI solutions and AI implementations. And so since then we just haven't looked back. So just doing a lot of speaking events and lots of proposals right now. That's with stacks of proposals at the moment, more than usual. So yeah.
Yeah, it feels like there is this wave, and I'm sure you're feeling this too, that, you know, there've been a few ripples. It is like we're kind of out in the surf, we're waiting for the next set. There's a few
Mhm.
ripples coming through, but we know, because it's always the way, we've seen the cycles,
Yeah.
we know there's a big set coming. And it kind of does feel like that, doesn't
Mhm.
it? That, you know, there's obviously some very, very, very early adopters in here playing and actually seeing some
Mhm.
great gains according to the research. But the
Yeah.
vast majority of people are kind of, they're starting to put the wetsuit on, they're starting to think about coming into the water, but they're
Mhm.
not quite there yet. Why do you think that is?
I think there's many reasons. So first, it's very new and it's moved so fast that it takes time for people to really understand what it can and cannot do. The next is that there is a bit of that hype cycle with some disillusionment. So, we might see a video of someone who, I don't know, just pick something random, this tool that you can use and it's going to create slide decks and they're going to be amazing. And you just have to write one prompt and you're done. And then when you use it, the reality is like, oh, this actually takes work, or it's not quite there yet. The polish isn't there. And if the polish isn't there, then you still have to put a lot of time in. And so then you feel disillusioned and you're like, oh, this is not what it was sold to be or whatever. There's also part of that hype is that sometimes we'll have projects where, in order to get the AI layer, I think of it as like a 3-layered cake. So you need your processes that the AI is going to be executing. Then you need your data. The data could be, you can view it data, then process, or process, then data. It doesn't really matter, but you need those two things. The data in relation to what the AI needs to know in order to be your AI, right? Not just a generic AI. Like, what is that value? The spice, I've sometimes called it, or data is oil. It's like that critical layer. And then the third is going to be either those automations or the business logic it's running. What is the AI doing? And then making sure that you actually need AI for those operations. Or if you're just doing math and it's deterministic, don't use AI there, right? Like, use AI for things that are subjective decisions, qualitative decisions. And and so sometimes the reality is we'll talk to a mid-sized company or bigger, and they just don't have process. Everything's been tribal knowledge in people's heads, or they've been doing things on phone calls and handshakes, and people know how to do their job really well. But if you want to do something in, let's say, in marketing, where you're augmenting the sales process, maybe twice as many proposals can be written in a day, and you want to use AI to help support people so that they're really doing the parts of the proposal that require, the strategic thinking of the marketing person or the salesperson, and you want AI to fill in all those other gaps need to be very well defined process. And if it's a big org and there hasn't been any process done, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, but it's actually not the sexy AI part. It's all the process and the data part needs to be done. And so sometimes it could be a price tag thing, where I mean, there's one company that we're working with. The AI solution that we're building is designed to double the revenue, which is pretty significant when you're in a double-digit $1 million company. But price tag for that could be 5 figures, could be 6 figures. If in this case, because there's all this other foundational work that needs to be done, plus all the testing and so forth. So sometimes it's also just a scoping thing, like, oh, I thought this was magic. We would just install it, be done, and we've doubled our business. The Yeah, so it feels a lot like we're in the beginning of the internet phase, right? When websites first came out, and there's a lot of companies that think like, we don't really need a website. What's a website? Yeah, and then once people start understanding what are the areas, because there's a lot of failure in AI too. And so once people start to really understand what are the types of projects that are successful, what is the approach that's needed, then people are going to there's going to be a lot more case studies. There are some already appearing, but there's like going to be a more clear pattern of like, these are the ways that it can be applied that are going to be effective. And we're going to see this big rise up that's coming of more and more successful adoption in the areas that are successful. And last thing I'll say before my long answer, sorry, is that once the thing with these AI solutions is, once you get it right, it's the return on that investment is potentially long term, and the scaling on it is infinite or potentially infinite. It's like going from physical products to software products, right? Once you have a physical product, you have to decide how many you're going to create, or if you have people, you have to hire 5 people. But if you have a system that can scale, that only needs people to monitor or manage it, or to be the the people who are kind of like making sure that the system is working well, you're unlocking scaling as well. So like a lot of marketing agencies in the US, at least, I don't know the numbers in the UK, but here in the US, we try a rough number is about 200K revenue per head is kind of a maximum point traditionally. I don't know if that's been adjusted for inflation lately, but that's a number that's been in my head for a while. But if you have AI enabling that person, like, that number is back on the table. Like, that is not a fixed number anymore. You could be having an agency with 500K per person, and your marketing agency might be 5 or 50 or whatever it is. But yeah, I'll end it there. But yeah, there's probably some other reasons why we're seeing hesitation. But sometimes it's upper management oh yeah, we've seen also someone from top down says, we need AI. Where's our AI mandate? Our investors want to make sure that we're doing something in AI. And so then you get this kind of, sometimes it ends up becoming half-hearted because it's just a box that's being checked, and that's what's being passed down. Other times we're seeing that from bottom up, the people within the organization want to do, could be the marketing person, could be the copywriter, could be the developer. Someone from the team in the company wants to do more of what they love and less of what they don't, right? So their top and bottom line, they want to push, expand. And so you get these initiatives that are either curated from people up, or at least some experimental groups, and then you get some cool projects that come from that direction too. So anyway, back to you,
It
Neil.
feels, yeah, it sort of
Yeah,
feels like a bit of an adjustment here, the way that you're
adjustment
describing it,
phase.
Sebastian,
Yeah.
because it feels that when you talk about the whole kind of process bit and
Hmm.
process and data as you described it
Yeah.
kind of feels that those who do will succeed and will achieve. Those who
Yeah.
don't and are in this kind of this tribal mentality, as you described, I'm paraphrasing
Hmm.
exactly how you said it, but
Yeah.
where that kind of that human knowledge of how we do things is kind of, well, again, that's so high risk, isn't it? Because that person leaves and then you have a huge gap. This is
Hmm.
almost going back to saying, if you've got good process mapping in your organization, you have then the bedrock, the
Yeah.
foundation for being able to do AI. If you don't, you're going to do
Yeah.
exactly, it was almost like you're going to scale up the problems that actually you've got under the hood, even if you don't realize it. Because if you've got everything in individuals' heads, that's not a sustainable business, is it?
Yeah. And I would say and I think that goes down, or goes back rather, to foundational business practices in general. If you have a business and you want to if you want to have the roles in your business be immortal or perpetual, eternal, you need to make sure that when people leave a certain role, that a new person can come in, and it's the processes, the definitions, the data, essentially, of your business are the things that are going to perpetuate. Or if you wanted to franchise your business, you can't scale it in any kind of way. You can't do that without the processes. So it is kind of good, strong business fundamentals to have those. It's just that with AI, it just emphasizes that need even more, because if you don't have processes, and let's say you don't have data, then the thing you have to resort to get your AI juice, your AI flavor, is that you have to be using it more as a tool approach rather than a business foundational approach. And by that, I mean, you can find off-the-shelf tool that does things that it thinks are prescribed as being your toolkit of what the company thinks you should be doing, or you find someone else's custom GPT that they've made, or whatever it is, this tool that has AI in it, and then you're going to have to adopt those methodologies, those approaches to your business. And that might actually be fine for especially smaller businesses. I think that's not a good business approach. It's just that with AI and with the potential that you're being offered here, you can also do it the other way around, where you look at what are your business processes, what is your data, and build things from that foundation on top of it. It's almost like once you have your data and your processes, the services, which are the AI layers, kind of almost create themselves from that. As an example, for ourselves in our business, we have this policy of capturing all data everywhere as much as we can from all directions. And it's all being put into one kind of mother of all data system. And now that we have that, so, everything about the business, our brand values, our customer types, our future plans, but also team strengths, weaknesses, our pipeline. I mean, everything you can think of is in there, but also meeting notes, newsletters I've posted, like everything's in that one spot. And now that I have it all collected together, I can generate new ideas for newsletters. I can talk to my AI that now starts to know my strengths and weaknesses and helps me to almost like my CEO coach. And then another service that came out of that was that our team got interested in it as well. And so now I clone essentially all my local super data into an agent that the rest of our team can talk to. And so our team can ask questions of me, like, oh, what was said in that meeting? Like the project manager needs to write a statement of work or something. And they can talk to me without talking to me to get some information out. And then when I have meetings, I'm able to have meetings that are more focused on the human connection, talking about opportunities, like I can have more real, deep conversations with people instead of having to just have conversations that are about information sharing, right? So it kind of also helps for that. And then now that I have the system, I can also, other things that we've started adding into it is these MCP connections. They're basically integrations between different systems. And so I'm able to, connect to our CRM system, my email, my calendar. It's all connected into that one system. So I can even say, yeah, I spoke with Neil, send Neil a thank you email based on the meeting notes, and make a prospect deal in my CRM, make me a to-do for a week from now. And then it does all that, but then it records all the data as well of that thing being done in the pipeline. I don't know. Anyway, to kind of put a bow on what I'm trying to say is, like, the more you focus on, even if the only thing you did was just decide we're going to start documenting our processes and we're going to start gathering all data everywhere, record all meetings everywhere, even your prompts that you're sending to AI, record those too, because that's your voice. In some instances, for engineers, if we're doing also data capture, data engineering work for engineers, and we'll take we have so we have to be creative sometimes on how to capture 20 years of this person's knowledge, and one of the ways is going through all their email in their company email and just categorizing and organizing all that data into this big data brain. And so if you have all this data, it's really awesome how much just emerges from that data, and organically then later all these creative ideas can come from that. Not saying that that's always the best approach. Like, we also do these whiteboarding sessions where we looked at problems and opportunities, pain points of an organization, and then map them between highest impact, lowest effort. And then that can be a good place to start. And then things that have very high impact but are complicated. What can we do to break those down into smaller steps that have individual impact, that kind of build steps towards that larger goal? That kind of approach is really great in like medium, larger businesses where, you want to get wins and you're building towards these larger AI transformative or digital transformative projects.
Mm. So, kind of the way you're describing it, then is it's almost like if I'm a business owner, business leader, might be mid-sized business, let's say, and
Mm-hmm.
I want to experiment and take those very early steps. I'm certainly not riding a wave yet. I'm just kind of making those initial kind of forays into this thing. It
Mm-hmm.
feels that rather than just jump straight in and start, choosing a whole bunch of tools to do bespoke kind of individual specialist things, it feels that you're advocating taking a real step back and really understanding how your business ecosystem is set up and how it works. Because without that, this is going to be almost feels very sporadic activity. I love the analogies that you were using there and the
Mm-hmm.
example where, after a meeting, a whole host of things happen that are valuable for both ends of or both parties, both ends of that relationship. And of course, you have to know how things work and what the typical kind of interaction styles and processes are to be able to even go there and then to start to think about AI. Feels
Mm-hmm.
like there's quite a big time investment here required, even before you start to even think, okay, where can we plug AI in?
Yeah, I would say that's great. I would say actually the first step is a mindset approach shift, right? Moving from a post-pandemic mindset to where, depending on your field, maybe the urgency was just hire as many people as quickly as we can if you were working in digital, right? That was a common theme. And now, realizing we're in an AI economy, and what does that mean? And so instilling and working on that kind of change management or cultural shift is a big part of it. The larger the organization, the harder that might be to achieve as well. I would say, smaller companies, it's like big ships, small ships, right? The smaller the ship, the faster it can turn. But there are disadvantages of being a small ship, of course, right? You have to move out of the way from the bigger ones. Um, but so that, I would say, that is important. And then thinking about what does that translate into? Are you going to be doing top-down initiatives where you're looking at ways to improve your top of the line, so more revenue, or bottom of the line, reducing costs? Are you going to be focusing on pain points? Do you need to accumulate wins of showing ROI, showing value on return, and then building on those to create an emergent transformation? Or, we've worked with companies, for example, industry manufacturing, where they have really old systems. So they want to do a digital transformation. And then now it's like digital transformation with AI, right? So those tend to be bigger projects. So that could be the approach. So understanding strategically how you want to approach it. Another thing too that I've seen organizations do, many others, and then we've done it ourselves too, is instilling also this culture of experimentation. That can be a weekly or a monthly meeting where people come together and they just show, like, these are the things I'm playing with, experimenting with. You have to take into account, of course, your privacy and security policies of your company, right? So of course, you have to like filter that through your company's needs or limitations, but that can be really exciting and interesting. People on our team have just shown up and be like, I started training an image server. Look, we can now do images that are brand adopted into our clients' colors and themes, and, remove bias or whatever it might be through this like image server training. And then it's like, whoa, interesting, cool. We have this whole, so you can get like these new products and services kind of come out of that. And that experimentation sometimes is also just trying out different tools to see what are off the shelf things, because it can give you ideas, even if it's not perfect, right, for what you need for your business. So figuring out how you want to approach it, and then realizing, I think, as a secondary initiative, how important process and data is, and starting to work on that. Maybe you decide we're not recording all our meetings right now. Maybe the first step is we're going to record them all and we're going to store them all somewhere for later, right? We're just going to start storing data. In parallel, you might have another initiative, which might be unrelated to that right now. Maybe it's we want to work on establishing our tone of voice. I'm just giving an example. Establishing our tone of voice so that not just our copywriter, but anyone can engage an AI to rewrite text in the tone of voice of the business or the main persona of the business. And maybe it doesn't get it perfect, but it gets it like more than 80% there as your first kind of bar. And that can be going on in parallel with your data collection. And then once you have that tone of voice system, this is what I'm talking about with these emergent steps, you can then link that to anything else in your business that you want to automate can now leverage your tone of voice microservice or micro AI service as part of it, right? So you're building these little components that you can then keep plugging into more and more things. And then all of a sudden, all those meetings you're recording, now, I don't know, you could send a thank you email to your participants in your webinar in the tone of voice of the person who's leading the webinars, because you spent time doing both of those two things separate, and now you can like merge the two together. And so, just as an example of that. So just to wrap that up, I would say first step is just kind of strategizing, figuring out how you want to approach it, in thinking about where do you want to end up on that AI spectrum? Do you want to be an AI early adopter, AI first, everything is AI? Why aren't we using AI everywhere? Or do you want to be in a more of an AI integrated, so you are using AI everywhere, but it doesn't have to be everywhere? Are you going to be AI curious or AI specific, just targeted? There's like one specific thing we're going to try, and we're going to be cautious and get that one thing to work, see that, and maybe that's what you need to do in order to build that trust or that momentum or those benefits.
So it feels like without a playbook, because let's face it, none of us have got the ultimate playbook because we're creating this as we work, aren't we? That actually having that almost that personalization, there's a lot of talk about the phrase hyper personalization when we start talking AI, but I think it applies to self as well, doesn't it? Really, we can make those judgments and those decisions that you've just given us, all those options there. Well, we can choose which one, and there is almost no right or wrong answer. There might be, oh, okay, if I make a little inroad into this one, I could then scale it. So there is a right answer, which is do more. But initially, it's almost like you can't go wrong as long as you commit to something. Is that kind of right?
I would agree. If you're committing to the process, meaning we're going to start using AI, we're going to experiment with it, we're going to create some training, create some space for people to experiment, that is really great. I think that is going to start moving you in the right general direction. You might not land yet on the island, but at least you're going towards the island, right? You're in that direction of where you need to be going. And then I will say though, once you start getting to the point of like, okay, now we're going to put in a project, we're going to put in some significant investment, whether it's time or money, and we want to be successful. We don't want to fail on our implementation. I think that's when I would go back to saying, the two types of projects right now that we see that are the most successful. And when I say we, I mean not just us, but also the industry. Like when I've researched what kinds of AI projects are failing and which ones are working, it's going back to process, I think, fundamentally, whether that's a process that's more sequential. If an email comes in, check the sentiment, and you have very clear rules. If this email is someone asking for support, then move it down this pathway. Then analyze in a second step, does it seem urgent or normal priority? And if you have a doubt, AI, if you have a doubt, mark it urgent, because I'd rather have it be urgent than not. Move it to the next step. So if you have very clear defined processes, or similar, but if you have very clear defined decision trees, under these circumstances, put this product on sale. So it's kind of a strategic kind of thing. Like if you have your own decision making that you do for your consulting, for your business advising, or whatever it might be that seems high level, but you can actually map it out into a logic tree, right? And you can kind of make that into something that is strict in a way. those kinds of projects that are either flow charts or decision trees are a lot more likely to be successful, especially if you can quantize the value of that system into time saved or dollars earned, right? So if you know we're spending 5 hours a week doing what's this current one I'm thinking of? So there's this current project where the customer is spending 5 hours a week trying to look through documents to make sure that the document which has been scanned has the right address and name as the search query, and there can be differences of spellings because someone might be a junior or not. And traditional search is just not finding it because of these permutations. Like someone might have written on the deed or on the document or whatever it might be, a misspelling or something like that because of the clerk error. And so the, if you know that this system is currently taking a human 5 hours a week, and you're able to then use, combination of AI, OCR, AIs for doing, because AI is really good at doing vague matches, right? Like I think of it, sometimes I think of AI as like, oh, it's now we're dealing with quantum mechanics in the IT world because it's probabilities, right? Like normal prior computer stuff was always deterministic. It was like 1 + 1 is 2, and unless you get a what is it, like a tachyon particle that does like a bit flip, like unless you have that, like your system is always going to be doing 1 + 1 = 2. But it might not be a tachyon, and someone will correct me, but there's some solar particle that flips bits. But now with AI, it's like it's always probabilities. So that is amazing because there are things that humans do that are probability wise, right? Like semantics, like me trying to decide if Neil right now is excited or just kind of bored by what I'm saying is not a science, right? I'm making a guess based on the cues I'm getting. So that's where the AI kind of comes in and brings its value. Sorry, I may have gone a little bit off track there on that
Yeah,
answer.
but it leads to a really interesting point, though, doesn't it? About the kind of this. Well, you've used the word semantic, but just this kind of, I guess, resistance in some parties, in some quarters, to the yes, I can do automation. Yes, I could kind of send out these automated thank you for attending the meeting. And as
Mhm.
an AI, I kind of know what your meeting was about. So therefore, I'm going to adjust it to make it sound quite human. But hey, Sebastian, I knew it didn't come from you. And that is a resistance factor for quite a number of people, I'm finding. How do
Yeah.
you think this is going to play out? Because process is great, data, yes, great. There's a lot of
Mhm.
evidence and backup there. But as soon as you then put in this kind of sentiment thing, you've mentioned kind of sentiment and semantics
Yeah.
a couple of times, it then becomes human. And there's a sensitivity in there, isn't there? That, well, Sebastian, how dare you? We've just spent an hour together in this meeting and, we've shared all this stuff. And then you've just let an AI do the summary. That doesn't feel right. I've invested my time in you.
Mhm.
There is a sensitivity here, isn't there, being
Yeah.
human?
Yes, and okay, there's a lot to say to that. So first of all, there's a branding issue with AI in general. I want like just to throw it out there. Like the fact that it's called artificial and intelligence is very triggering for us as humans in different levels. First, when we're saying that something is intelligent and we think of ourselves as intelligent, there's just this feeling of like, oh, it's like one more piece of what makes us unique and feel human and feel important is being challenged. And now you're calling it artificial, so it's fake, right? So now I'm going to be talked to or with by this fake system. I could talk a lot more about that, but moving on, the next thing to think about, or that I think about, is that AI that's coming in and changing the world. It's very similar, let's say, to when the camera was invented. And before that, people would only, if you wanted a photograph of yourself, you would have to hire an oil painter, right? And they would, if you wanted something realistic, and you would sit there and they would paint you with oil paints for hours, right, to give you this beautiful portrait of yourself. And then when the camera comes around, I mean, the camera was shunned heavily. Um, it was, I think people even thought of it as like work of the devil and things like that. And you come in and you put the little cloak thing on your face and you flash the light and all of a sudden you're just done in like seconds. And so all the painters were like so upset about it and definitely didn't consider it art, right? But I mean, these days, if you were to tell a photographer who has their photographs in a museum that what they're doing isn't art, they would look at you like you don't understand culture and what art is, right? So things do change as well in terms of cultural adoption and normalization. Okay, now third point or third thing to talk about is in your example, I would say because people want to have a connection with you. So if you're trying to send a thank you after a conversation, there's ways to approach how you're using the AI in ways that are transparent, that are sensitive to not feeling like you're just passing it all along. The analogy would be, let's say it wasn't AI, but let's say you had your secretary send a thank you email for attending. What would make that interaction feel still meaningful and not feeling as if you're being handed off? An example of that would be, we talked in this meeting about, I don't know, plumbing solutions or machine solutions for your business that can operate at a certain temperature or something. We talked a lot about that. And then the secretary, I'm going to put in quotes because this is actually what the AI is doing, goes off and researches some additional answers to things that we didn't have time to talk about on our call, and sends not just a thank you, but it says, "Oh, hey, you talked earlier with Bob, and thank you so much for talking with Bob. As a follow up, you had some questions on some of these manufacturing options. Here's 3 links to these things, and you asked about pricing. These kind of solutions or these parts tend to run in this range," or something like that. "Thank you so much for meeting with Bob. If you have any other questions, I might be able to answer them for you. And if not, I'll pass them on to Bob. Thank you very much. I don't know, David the robot," or whatever you want to sign it, right? As like at the end of it. But if you're doing something where it's like, it's a value add, it's not trying to pretend to be you, that could be an approach where you're keeping it human, right? It's the thing that the thing that's forgotten so much right now is that people will say in one breath, like, I mean, sometimes I meet people who are very strongly against AI, and then they will just go off to Google and just search stuff there. And it's interesting because I think that just goes back to the branding, because a Google search is no different than, I could say like, well, if you don't want to use computers, just go to the library and look up information in books, right? But instead we use Google. So we're using already a computer to facilitate and get these answers quicker. The AI, you can think of it depending on how you're using it, but you could think of it just as, okay, it's all the information that is already out there on the web, but instead of me having to type and then scroll through, click a page and then read it, it's just pre-reading the stuff for me so that I get the answer faster. So it's just glorified. It's like removing all those layers of friction to just get me more directly connected. And because of that, it's accelerated. But and in the, the AI systems are using right now, they're just probability words, right? They're just guessing what's the next word that they should be saying. It's anyway, sorry, I don't want to go too deep into the whole artificial intelligence philosophical cultural thing, but it's definitely part of the resistance, I think, though.
It is fascinating, though, isn't it? Really, I mean, I've been playing. I want to test out with you, Sebastian. The thing that I've been using is, rather than artificial, I've been using the phrase hybrid intelligence, because what I'm
Mm-hmm.
thinking, it would be a nice outcome. We can go a little bit philosophical. People like this,
Yeah.
because they're all thinking this. Let's face it, everybody's thinking this stuff. Is it right? Is it wrong? And there's something in
Mm-hmm.
between. But if we
Mm-hmm.
went down this kind of whole kind of moral thing about it's hybrid intelligence and it's okay, maybe then the artificial bit, the human bit, could co-create something in between that provides that value that you've just said there in the example of the, well, I've done a little bit of extra research because I kind of figured out, because I'm quite smart here, me the hybrid intelligence, David, is kind of that this would give value to you as a kind of a follow-up. And
Yeah.
it feels hybrid then, doesn't it? Because it's a little bit of me human, it's a little bit of robot, machine, kind of artificial. That feels okay, because if it's adding value, it adds value from my side of the relationship, it adds value from the recipient's side of the
Yeah.
relationship. That feels good. I think morally that
Yeah.
just feels, and ethically feels okay. What do you think?
All, yes, and I think also you're making me think also of the results I've seen from So different area, AI chatbots. So if you go to an AI chatbot and you're talking on the website with this AI agent, and let's say you know it's AI, right? There's no doubt. Or maybe you don't know also. It doesn't fully matter for my example. But studies have shown that if the AI chatbot is better than a person was in that role prior, right? So let's say you were talking on, you wanted to get a return on your product, and every time you ask a question, they go off and they have to ask some, it just takes them forever to get back to, maybe they're doing like a round robin chat, so that like you feel the time between them answering you each time, and they don't really know the answer and da da da. But then like I've seen also firsthand, and not just the ones we've implemented, but from other third parties too, like when these AI systems are really dialed in and they're very knowledgeable and they know way more than a person could instantly, people leave that engagement actually really happy, despite the fact that they even came into it knowing that it was AI. But it's kind of like you have to really prove to them that the system performs better. I think once, it's kind of like the same as my theory with self-driving, any like cars or planes, or I mean, planes and boats are already like well far ahead, but cars is a lot harder actually. But if you get to that point where it's not just equal to human performance, but it far exceeds it, people will change their attitude towards these systems pretty quickly. But we're just not there yet with a lot of these AI systems. Like we're still in the DOS ages. If your audience knows what DOS even is, because I'm a little bit older than many. But we're going to look back at these times, 20 years from now, and just be like, whoa, these AI systems were so basic and so simple. It's we're all these different things that seem right now like they're not, in some cases they're not quite there yet, or you have to know how to use them in a way that makes them have that quality. It actually, this reminds me the adage or the thought of like, when a new paradigm shifts in business, you always look at, is it better, faster, and cheaper? And if it's all three, then it's a complete revolution. For example, when blogging came out compared to traditional news writing of newspapers, there's one person I remember listening to a podcast about, and he talked about those three things. And he knew, I forget the name. I can look it up if people want to know in the comments. But he knew that blogging was going to be a complete revolution and was going to potentially kill traditional newspapers because it was faster, better, and cheaper. And the thing with AI right now is the faster and cheaper is easy, but the better is hard. And the better has to do with, in order to achieve the better, you have to have the testing, you need to have that human in or on the loop that we're talking about for the quality. You need to have really good data, and you have to have those processes, right? So you need those different things. And that's where the work comes in. A lot of these systems that fail, I see so many AI systems that are just, so I also have another business that does AI testing, TestFox, and there we test systems and so many AI chatbots. I can tell that, we test internal, external, but external is easier to test quickly. And those external systems, they're just not tested. I can get chatbots that shouldn't be giving me medical advice to just give me medical advice really quickly, for example. And it's like, what? So if people are just launching these systems and they're not focusing on the quality of the AI system, it's going to fail, and then they're going to feel like AI isn't ready, and then they're going to feel, or they were just sold on a dream, and they're going to be like, this is awful, get rid of it, and then think to themselves, I'm not even going to look at AI for the next 5 years or 2 years or whatever, like I'm done, like I got burned. But the problem is that there was a skip of the need for the quality step, right? So I would say AI is not quite there where it has all three right away. Maybe it won't ever get there. I think it will. But right now, you need the work to get the quality step. It's not an automatic given.
So I guess I've got a sort of a final point or final sort of question that I'm just really curious about, because it feels I'm always on the lookout, and I explained this right at the start of our conversation to you, Sebastian, that I'm always kind of on the lookout for little hooks, little bits in the conversation where I can sort of think, something extra in there. The thing that keeps coming back to me in this conversation is the word time. It feels that there's such a time kind of factor at play here. We have to invest time to be able to do this for our businesses. We need to
Mhm.
spend the time reflecting on where and how this might have best impact. But there's also a time factor here in terms of the output, as you say, with the chatbots, because if people feel they can get the value they need or the speed of the answer much quicker, there's a time
Mhm.
thing at play there. Is
Mhm.
time this kind of determinant factor that means AI is ultimately going to win at everything because it is just so darn quick or efficient or able to automate, or it's everything is about time here, isn't it, really?
I mean, anything that's software is going to have more and more AI in it. And I think once right now, companies are focused on using AI to reduce costs, is kind of the current trend we're seeing, which is resulting in a lack of hiring. I think a lot of people who are early career are seeing a major problem right now with freeze on hiring and even downsizing, right? Where companies are deciding to keep their top talent supplemented with AI and then, remove mid and junior positions. But that is going to go up to a point, and then we're going to go into the opposite phase where we're going to go back into a re-expansion because I don't think we fully realize as a society yet just how much more software can be created in all these different areas. And we're going to see this reverse back up where the total output of software in general and the micronization of AI and integration of AI into so many things, I believe, and external, all things remaining true, because tomorrow someone could launch fusion power or there's all kinds of things could change this prediction I'm making. But if things remain the way they are, we're going to actually see eventually this big boom of rehiring, and maybe with slightly different skill sets, right? If you don't know how to use AI or resist AI, you're going to have maybe a challenge in this new economy, right? But there's going to be this major expansion of way more output being created per person because of this AI augmentation. And I mean, in the end, everything, I mean, you how much money you make or business makes is variable, but how much time you have as a person is a fixed quantity. So in that perspective, time is a lot more valuable of a resource than money is, right? And but the two are always interchangeable, kind of like the E equals MC squared of physics, with the Einstein thing where matter and energy are interchangeable. In business, it's like money and time are interchangeable, except that time can't be created, right? It can only be spent. So, whereas money can be spent and created. Um, so, but yes, I agree with you. It's a lot, but it goes back to that faster, better, cheaper, right? Faster is one of the three. So faster implies the time, and it is way faster. I mean, even if you just use anyone who's touched ChatGPT or any of these AI systems will see how fast you get a certain output. Rewrite this text as I don't know, spoken in pirate or something. And it's just like, sure, yar, blah, blah, blah. It's just like instantly there. Like try do that, yourself. It would be way longer. Yeah.
Mm. It is just so fascinating, isn't it? I want to connect people with you, Sebastian. So how do people, because you mentioned obviously the testing, you obviously
Mhm.
have Fountain as well. So how do people kind of connect with you best for whatever it is they're looking for?
Yeah, so my LinkedIn page is a great place to find me. So it's just my first name, last name on LinkedIn. And otherwise, fountaincity.tech is the website for AI implementations, AI solutions, and predominantly mid to larger companies. If you're smaller, I'm happy to help out and see if we're not the right fit, how to help guide you. And then if you want, my other business is testfox.ai, and that is for AI testing. So if you have a system that's either new or existing, internal or external, conversational agent, you want to make sure it's working well or is going to work well for, compliance, bias, liability, trust, persona testing, all this kind of, could talk about a bunch about that, but just testing in general. testing and compliance. That's testfox.ai. You can find me there too. And then I do have also a YouTube channel that's just started with just some thoughts on it. It's not very big yet, but I do have a YouTube channel as well if people want to follow me there. Yeah.
Brilliant. And I have a sneaky feeling they'll want to. Sebastian, this has just been such a great conversation. Well, I feel it's been less of a conversation and more you teaching me, which is wonderful because
Wow.
you've just got me so thinking about, so many different angles. And I think this is the lovely thing about these kinds of conversations with this emerging opportunity is that we don't know what is right. So what I'd love to do, if you're up for this, is actually, invite you to come back at some point in the hopefully not too distant future, and let's just explore kind of what happened in the interim, because this stuff is changing so quickly, and it would be lovely to see kind of the difference between now and then when that
sounds
actually
awesome.
occurs.
Yeah, I
So
would love
if you'd be
that.
up for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, this has been a
Wonderful.
really great conversation. You're a really good host. Thank you.
Oh, you're too kind. Thank you. Sebastian Chedal, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Neil. Bye-bye.